Good morning, everyone. This is Father Nate, missionary priest in Italy. Today, it's the memorial of St. Thomas Aquinas, priest and doctor of the Church. If you are anywhere except where I live, because this is the day his body was taken to France, I live in Fossanova, which is where Aquinas died, so for many years we had his body here. It's still a sore point in our little town. But nonetheless, in the name of apostolate and all things good, we will celebrate today the memorial of St. Thomas Aquinas, priest and doctor of the Church. The readings, though, are taken from the day, which would be Tuesday of the third week in ordinary time. And so the gospel comes to us from Mark's Gospel, chapter 3, verses 31 through 35. The mother of Jesus and his brothers arrived at the house. Standing outside, they sent word to Jesus and called him. A crowd seated around him told him, "Your mother and your brothers and your sisters are outside asking for you." But he said to them in reply, "Who are my mother and my brothers?" And looking around at those seated in the circle, he said, "Here are my mother and brothers. For whoever does the will of God is my brother and sister and mother." Today's Gospel from Mark presents us with a compelling and an interesting scene. As Christ is preaching, his mother, sisters, and brothers show up and ask to see him. And Christ replies by asking who his relatives really are, and by giving the strong reply, "Whoever does the will of God is my brother and sister and mother." Now, there's a lot we can say about this passage. First, the word used for brothers and sisters is a broad one, and it can mean cousins or more distant relatives than brothers or sisters. It doesn't mean that Mary had other children, and indeed, we know from tradition that she didn't. This is important because sometimes this is an objection that Protestants raise to this passage. Likewise, also as a reply to a Protestant objection, Jesus' reply isn't an insult to Mary. Right? Some people think he's trying to diminish the importance of his mother. On the contrary, Mary always did God's will. So we could say that not only was she Jesus' mother in the physical sense of the word, meaning she gave birth to him, but she was also most perfectly his mother according to his words here, because she always did the Father's will. Now, what really grabs our attention, though, is the power of those words. Whoever does the will of God is my brother and sister and mother. Now, in large families, we know that the siblings all tend to resemble each other physically. So much so that it's a common experience. We can recognize someone as a member of a family even if we've never met them before. We just kind of look at their face and say, like, "Oh, you are a such and such. You belong to the Smith family or the Jones family." And I know that because even though I've never met you, just by looking at you, I see the characteristics that make you a part of that family. In the same way, too, to be Christ's brothers or sisters means to be very close to him, to resemble him. And this conformity comes about because when we follow Christ's example, as he said, he came from heaven not to do his own will, but to do the will of the one who sent him, we come to resemble him, right? Whoever does the will of the Father is one who follows Christ. Now, to be Jesus' mother is an even greater honor. As we said, the Blessed Virgin Mary is Christ's mother since she gave birth to him. She brought him into the world so that he could save it. And when we do God's will, we become Christ's mother, in the sense that we make Christ present again wherever we are. We bring Christ into the world around us, in our daily lives. In other words, to do God's will means to perpetuate Christmas in daily life, in every moment. Think about it for a moment. These are huge graces. To be Christ's brother, sister, or mother is no small thing. It's a great grace, and it's a grace that Christ wants to give us. The only thing he asks of us is that we do his Father's will. That's what makes us his brothers, sisters, and mother. Everything has to be subordinated to God's will. That means everything, absolutely everything. Our time, our talents, our gifts, everything. Writing to one of his spiritual directees, Saint Claude de la Colombière, he was the spiritual director of Saint Margaret Mary, he uses a very blunt analogy. He says, "These are the dispositions in which I hope you will render your soul into the hands of our Lord Jesus Christ. And then he says, namely, that even if you knew infallibly that by living a single day through your own will, you would go straight to heaven and be placed among the seraphim, you would rather die by God's will and go to satisfy his justice in purgatory till the end of the world. Thy will be done, my God. That is the one thing necessary. That's kind of hard to have that much confidence in God and say, okay, whatever you want. But it's true. That's the attitude we need to have. And on the opposite side, we have St. Alphonsus Liguori, who says that the one who follows his own will, independently of God's, is guilty of a kind of idolatry. Instead of adoring God's will, in a certain sense, he adores his own. And that's going to cost us. It could cost us eternally, but it will certainly cost us happiness and joy in this life. So we can ask ourselves, how willingly do we submit to God's will, as expressed in just the little things, our daily duties, our state of life, doing our homework? Do we try our best, or do we constantly make excuses and try to convince ourselves that what we're doing is right? Or even, although we might not say it in these words, that even what we're doing is more important than God's will. Now, to obtain this grace of uniformity with God's will, St. Alphonsus Liguori says we should invoke the assistance of the saints, and most of all, our Mother Mary. She is the most perfect of all the saints, because she most perfectly embraced the will of God at all times. And so through her intercession, let's ask for the grace to embrace God's will in everything and at all times.
If you found this video fruitful, please feel free to share it with a friend or family member. Or if you would like to learn more about our missionary priests throughout the world and how to support them, please visit iveamerica.org. Thank you for watching, and God bless.